Welcome back to my continuing coverage of the Salins 6 hours here at Watkins Glen International Speedway. Now, I'm standing on the FAF Motorsports and driveway porch. This is kind of the side of racing a lot of people don't see. And, you know, I was having a conversation with Miles Rowe today, and one of the things I said, or we were kind of coming to the conclusion of is, you know, it's tough to kind of understand, especially as an outsider, like how racing even works. Well, it's a lot of these hospitality and corporate events that really kind of drive sponsorships home or get them across the finish line. So places like this are really in a lot of ways the reason your favorite race cars are on the racetrack. So I guess I thank them for allowing me to use this porch. And the great view of Turn 10 here at Watkins Glen. I guess I keep wanting to call it the Continental Series. The Michelin Pilot Sport Pilot Challenge will be starting pretty soon, so maybe we'll get that in the background. But we did have qualifying today for the Salins 6 hours of the Glen. Now, obviously, you know, the disclaimer you always have to give before an endurance race is that ultimately, how much does qualifying actually mean in a 6 hour race? It probably means more than, say, the Rolex or Sebring does, because a 6 hour race in a lot of ways now is very much a sprint. You know, there's not a whole lot of endurance elements that we see these days. It truly is a heads up 48 car duel for the full length of the race. It's not kind of what we see. We don't even see it at the Rolex anymore now that you think about it. I mean, maybe Sebring's a little bit more attrition heavy, but here at the Glen, a nice smooth track. These cars are kind of at the peak of their development, particularly the DPIs, which are of course the fastest prototypes in the world right now and will be for the foreseeable future. I think the cars coming next year will be slightly slower, unfortunately, but them's the brakes. I guess that's what we get for convergence. So front row for today's race was a total Acura sweep. Not really surprising, seeing again as there's only two manufacturers in DPI, and they're essentially even, but not even at the same time. And what I mean by that is, you may have noticed at my coverage of Long Beach and Detroit, you saw total Cadillac dominance. You saw Sebastian Bourdais just absolutely tear it up in the 01 Ganassi car. That's because the Cadillac is more suited to those types of tracks. Then you get around here at Watkins Glen, where the Orica chassis that the Acura is based on can really stretch its legs, is this type of a track, a nice smooth, high-speed track. And that has kind of brought up a concern that I've seen in the media a couple of times, that IMSA should introduce track-specific BOP. I disagree with that, or race-specific BOP. I disagree with that on principle. I mean, obviously already BOP is kind of not necessarily a super pure thing. It's a kind of a compromise. You can't really have open development anymore, but you also want to have multiple manufacturers and different ways of building the mousetrap, so to speak. But with what has happened now with the DPI class is that it's whittled its way down from 4 manufacturers down to 2, and those 2 manufacturers, like I said, are at the height of their development. So you get to this point where we're here in 2022, this is the last couple of races for this formula. The cars are so even, or at least they have been brought up to their performance maximums, and thus they're going to have their pros and cons on different types of tracks, or the different types of tracks that they were taking down the development path originally back in 2017. So a track like this, you've got the Acuras on the front row, and unless something crazy happens, we're pretty much expecting the Acura to win tomorrow. Last year it was the Mazda winning. Remember when Mazda ran in this? It wasn't even that long ago, but it seems like a lifetime ago. Mazda won here last year, but who finished second and third were the 2 Acuras. So guess, and in the exact order, by the way, that they're starting on the front row, car 60 from car 10. So I would be surprised if a Cadillac wins tomorrow. I think you should be excited if a Cadillac wins tomorrow because of how tough the competition is from Acura at this particular track. Now next year, I wouldn't expect that this is going to be quite as much a problem, and that's why I disagree with them going to potentially track-specific BOP, because you're going to have one more manufacturer at least with Porsche in the mix, and cars that are brand new and cars that will need to develop over the course of time. So you're going to see cars be potentially unreliable, and that's in more ways than one. Potentially they're just going to be slow at some tracks, and 5 or 6 years down the line in development, they probably will be faster. Let's talk a little bit about GT, shall we? So the BMWs have really, found the pace. Not really surprising, obviously, but I remember back to Sebring when Paul Miller showed up. I remember Turner, and of course Rahal Letterman. They've cut back to one car for the remainder of the season in GT Pro. Those particular cars the pace has been great. They've been right there. They haven't really been inconsistent either. They've been super consistent, I should say. It seems like it'll be a battle between the BMWs, the Lexuses, and the Aston Martins. Corvette, again, off the pace. It's interesting with the Corvette, too. There's an interesting point there because you remember back to Sebring, where the Corvette won and essentially ran away with the race. I know the TR3 Lamborghini was kind of chasing them down at the end of the race, but it was a total contrast in 360 from what we saw at Daytona. And we get back here, and guess what? The Corvette's back at the back of the field again. So I wonder why, on a smooth, fast track, it seems like the Corvette is deficient, but when you go to a street course or you go to a track like Sebring, all of a sudden the Corvette finds pace. I don't know. It's very interesting. The other thing I find fascinating is because essentially you're treating this as a sprint race in a lot of ways, where you're going to have either 2 drivers or 3. Most teams have opted for 3 drivers, and some are compelled by the rules to have 3 drivers. But in the pro categories, there's a split. There's 2 driver lineups and there's 3 driver lineups. And I wonder how much time can be saved by not doing a driver change or potentially having drivers who are comfortable in the cars. Now, that being said, it's very hot today. It's going to be hot tomorrow. These are all closed cockpit cars. How much of a factor is that going to be tomorrow? And there's also, believe it or not, a factor for rain, potentially thunderstorms at the end of the 6 hours. And remember, thunderstorms these days might as well be send them home now. And I think that may be a factor. So they may be racing to the rain at the end of this race, or at least racing to the lightning, of course. They will go in the rain. They just won't go in the storms. So should be a very exciting race. In fact, I think this is going to be an exciting race too. Look at all those cars. They're coming behind me. That's the, what is it called? It's some Casino 120 for the Michelin Pilot Challenge. But of course, now they're getting very noisy. So I guess this is the time to bid adieu. Let me know what you think down in the comments, who you think will win the Watkins Glen 6 hours. Of course, I will have a video tomorrow on what exactly all went down. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.